I've been out, did I tell you,
Oh,
I was laying sod
cut,
and chopping down trees?
Yeah, you cut it down a tree, you told me that.
Use suntan lotion, it's looking really shiny. On both of us, actually.
I know. It's the lights, they're pretty bright. Hello everybody, this is Randy Ross, Real-Time Politics coming to you tonight. I'm so excited to have our special guest, the former mayor of Orange County, Mayor Rich Crotty. Thank you for being here, sir.
It's great to be here.
How are things? You know, the other day I called you about this and you're out chopping down a tree, so I wouldn't even think that you do your own landscaping.
Well, I figure that if it's good enough for Ronald Reagan, it's good enough for me. And so I actually enjoy getting outdoors a lot, and that includes working in the yard.
Fantastic. What I'm going to do here, Mayor, is I'm going to have, this is a real-time interaction, so I'm going to have this up. And folks, if you want to ask the mayor any questions during our interviews, certainly do post those. We are here, like I said, live. And, you know, this is kind of new for all of us, actually. This is I'm so excited about our new studio here. We're at Bayshore Interactive Studio Bayshore. We're on the 15th floor up here at a high-rise building overlooking Lake Eola. It's a wonderful space. Thank you, Tommy Bayshore, for providing it to us. Mayor, why don't you kind of take us, I was not aware of how many different offices you've held over the years. Do you mind kind of starting right from the very beginning and telling us how you got involved in politics?
I don't want to go back too far, but I will tell you that as an elementary school student, I walked precincts with my dad for Eisenhower.
Really?
As a little kid, yeah. But as far as elected...
Now you're from Orlando, right?
Since 1960, we moved here from upstate New York. My father was in the aerospace and defense industry with a company called Bendix and came to Lockheed Martin. And we moved kit and caboodle to Florida. And and the rest of that is, in terms of answering your question, is that at age 29, I was elected to the State House of Representatives. And
now, was that the first time you'd ran for office?
I had run 2 years previously and really learned a lot about campaigning, and I didn't win. So at 27 I ran. 2 years later at 29, I took all the things that I did wrong the first time,
right,
and tried to fix them. And we were able to succeed in even then a fairly large county as a 29-year-old. And
that's pretty impressive.
Well, when I landed in Tallahassee, there were 28 Republicans in a House body of 120 members. So your chances of getting things done weren't real great.
Wow.
I had previously been there as an intern in the Senate Republican Leader's Office, so I knew the process of getting Democrat co-sponsors on my bill, working with the staff who I'd worked with in the past, and was and really did pretty well for myself in the House. I was at one time the only Republican to serve on the House Appropriations Committee and Finance and Tax at the same time. And my colleagues voted me the best in committee because of the things we did there. And for example, bringing home money for the Institute for Simulation and Training at UCF, CREO, which is the study of lasers. They're both $6 billion businesses today. So that was that. How much do you want me to talk?
I want you to keep talking. Okay. I want, you know, the funny part about it, Mayor, is I know, of course, seen you, you know, when you were in the role as mayor, but I didn't know you then. And having got to know you in this past year, especially watching through the Trump campaign process, you know, people don't. I didn't know you're actually kind of funny, and you know, you have.
But looks aren't everything.
But you have this long history of Orange County politics, specifically, but you know, in the state of Florida, and you know, connected. Yeah, I believe I read an article once that said that you were one of the most respected Republicans in the state of Florida, and I think there's a reason for that. You know, some of the things that I've learned over time about, you know, the various roles that you've been in, I don't know too many people that have said something bad about you. I'm sure there are some, but tell us what you think is probably one of the most challenging parts about being in elected office, and one of the things that maybe you might even miss or long for a little bit that you used to when you were doing it.
Well, the idea of being able to accomplish things, and those appropriations I mentioned. Let me real quickly go through the other offices.
Okay, let's go ahead.
So the Senate, I had worked in the Senate as an intern.
Okay.
And I figured my path to get to be a senator was to go to the House first, and we did that. And I recall as a young student, an FSU student at the time, that I was pushing the button on a Xerox machine up in the front corner of the chambers, and I said, someday, by gosh, I'm going to be pushing one of those senator voting buttons.
That's very cool.
So I did that for a short period of time. Reapportionment sort of got me because it wasn't a long term, but I was named the Republican floor leader for the time I was there. With a growing family, moved to back full-time to Orlando, became the Orange County property appraiser, which was recognized by the International Association of Assessing Officers as the best property appraiser's office in the country.
That's impressive.
And a second award that had to do with public information because we were the first to have a website, a property appraiser's website.
How long did you serve as property appraiser?
8 years.
8 years.
And at the end of the eight years, Mel Martinez had become the county mayor, and we had an arrangement with the county to do their geographic information system. So that was done in the property appraiser's office, and we shared it, and the county helped pay for that. And so after going toward the end of my second term, which was an 8-year run, I got the most intriguing phone call that a politician probably ever would get.
Do tell.
I'm going to tell. So it was that President Bush was appointing the county mayor, Mel Martinez, to be secretary of HUD in Washington, Housing and Urban Development.
I remember that.
And that his brother, Governor Jeb Bush, was looking for a replacement, and he had me in mind.
Wow. Because
I had been his dad's state director in 1988 and gone back to the first campaign that Bush was running for president.
Right.
And so there was an appointment there. So I took Mel's last 2 years and then 2 4-year terms. So I got to be
so
mayor.
You got
for
the mayor
10
for
years.
10 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And I think a lot of the viewers and the citizens will acknowledge we get a lot done.
Yeah, you did get a lot
done.
Very, very. Your name's recognition is very high. So obviously you were done with mayor. You've done all these different things. But what would you say is probably one of the most challenging things about being an elected official?
In general?
In general, just in general.
You know, I'm sort of a people person, and when somebody strikes up a conversation with me in the checkout line at Publix, I like it, and we talk. But every once in a while, you'll find.
I remember seeing you at Lowe's once before. This was years and years and years ago, and I just said hello, Mayor, and you said hello to me. You didn't know me, but you were just very approachable. I thought it was great because I see you on television.
Boots or flip flops?
I can't remember what you're wearing. I just remember meeting you and seeing you there.
No, but you know, probably the roughest part is that on many occasions I've attended an event or a meeting or advocated for a cause and gone to meetings, and then some of the press coverage, I'd go, well, that's not the same meeting I was at.
So you can feel what President Trump is going through then a little bit. There's a couple people that have come into the thread that wanted to say hello. Ralph Smith, I believe he's state committeeman over in Lake County. Also, Greg Forney says hello. Number of people obviously remember you from your time of being a mayor. Tell us something that people don't know about Rich Crotty. What do you do for fun? What kind of things that, you know, like I said, I called you and you were out putting down sod and cutting down trees, but what are the things that make you normal? What do you do that's just enjoyable?
What's this normal thing about it? Well, this afternoon I spent an hour in the gym.
Okay. So you're active?
Yes, stay active. We have a condo at the beach. I like going to the beach.
Very
and that
nice.
usually involves running and walking and bike riding as well.
Awesome.
We've had a family tradition that right after Christmas each year, up until the day after New Year's, we would go get a cabin in the North Carolina.
And how many children
mountains.
do you have?
2 children. Christina is 29 and Tyler is.
Do they live here in Orlando or?
They do.
They do. What do they think about you being in politics? I mean, that had to be pretty fascinating for them to be, let's say, in high school or college and to say, yeah, my dad's the mayor. I mean, that had to be kind of interesting for them.
Well, Christina became sort of a sidekick for me. She got interested at a young age, like I got interested in a young age.
Right.
And attended a lot of banquets. And in fact, when President George W. Bush was in town, the day that he released his book and the paintings of the 50 citizens, he came to a a Christian event where there were about 3,500 people there.
Right.
And I took Christina to that, and he couldn't have been nicer. And we have a picture we had made with him. And
how did you meet the Bushes? Out of just curiosity, just through your role as mayor, or how did all that happen?
Okay, great question, and a fun story. I was in the state capitol as a freshman House member, and that hardly anybody knew outside the county borders. And I had hired an aide who'd been an employee of Senator Ed Gurney, who had tried to go back to the Congress after he'd been on the Watergate Committee and so on from Central Florida. And at the very last minute, she decided not to go to Tallahassee and be my aide, and because she was getting married. And so I got a call from another House member named Tom Gallagher, and he said,
I remember that name.
I've got this gal. She's just leaving the Kennedy School at Harvard with her master's degree, and her home address is in Florida, and she would come work as your session aide.
Wow.
So she came, and she was very good. She went on to become a deputy secretary to HHS with Tommy Tompkins, and had a great career. But she one day came in the office and said, well, there's somebody I'd like you to meet. He's up in the press room, and he's having a press conference announcing for President of the United States. And I said, well, who's that? Because there was about 10 of them running that day. And she said, it's George Bush. I said, well, that'd be pretty cool. I'd like to go meet him.
Right.
So, and this was 1979, I'm guessing, and through there. And so we went up to meet him, and we get to the press room, and there's the press, the reporters, and their cameras, and their notepads, and a couple of traveling aides with candidate Bush and me and Janet Hale. And he had a nice statement, and they took it in and distributed it to their news outlets. And later, President Bush came up and greeted me and said, how'd you like to be my man in Florida? And I looked back at him and said, well, the competition's not too stiff. Which is a good thing to kid about today.
Right.
But it carried on the whole time.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Obviously, in the times when you were in elected office, things like social media really were just starting. You know, we don't see people picking up a physical newspaper like they used to. Where do you get your news from today? And more importantly, how do you feel about what the media is doing right now, not just to our president, but in general when it comes to feeding us stories?
Wow. How long is this show?
1 hour.
I get traditional news on cable networks. And
what's your favorite? It's okay to tell us which ones you like.
Well, I enjoy my cup of coffee and reading a actual newspaper in the morning with my cereal. And but I'll watch the cable news and sometimes the evening news on one of the networks, ABC or one of them. And I get a lot on the internet too.
What are your thoughts about how the media, at this stage? I mean, I look at what's going on, obviously, with the president, but in general, it's like this kind of if it doesn't bleed, it's not really a story. Do you believe that 24/7 news cycle has done that to us? Because you have a big difference between when you were first getting started in politics and where it is today.
Well, actually, one of my majors at UCF was communication.
Oh, really?
And we learned that news was to be factual and not to show even a facial gesture to show that you were supportive or unsupportive of this story.
Right.
So there was supposed to be who, what, why, when, and where, told in an honest way. This is what happened.
Right.
This was who was involved. This is where it happened, and tell the story that way. And frankly, those days are gone.
Sure.
There seems to be, in many cases, even from both directions. What's troubling to me about modern information delivery and about politics is the partisan nature.
Sure.
It's automatic. You got a different colored jersey on, I hate you, and if I get a chance, we're going to play Smash Mouth, and I'm going to make you bleed.
Right.
You know, it's automatic.
Sure.
And the visceral type of handling of President Trump is just stunning.
Right.
In the context of the truth, who, what, why, when, and where.
Right.
In that context, you just see a lot of bias. Now, it goes both ways.
Sure.
There are networks that are partisan in nature,
right,
and more defending of the current president, as some others were more defending of the immediate past president.
How do you feel, what's interesting to me as well, and I want to talk briefly, I know that you were not a Trump person in the beginning and you made a transition once he got the nomination. How do you feel about how our president is handling things? Is he giving us what we asked for? Could he give us less of the tweets? What are your thoughts? And if you can be honest, it's not going to hurt anybody's feelings.
I try to be honest.
No, but I know that not everybody, of course, is a big fan of the tweets, but we do see it as a direct line of communication to the American public. But what's your overall perception so far of how President Trump is doing?
Well, let me divide the question.
Okay, go ahead.
The tweets and
folks, I'm just looking at your comments and your questions, and if appropriate, we'll feed those to the mayor. But go ahead.
The getting up in the middle of the night to tweet an idea that he may have had in his head, I think probably is to his detriment at the end of the day. But it probably could be a case study of how journalism has changed since those days.
I absolutely believe that. Yes.
And so I wish some of the things that are happening were not happening. But notwithstanding his what some people think of as controversial style of presenting things, even without that, in this age of instant information, there's going to be people who are going to say things that may or may not be true. Right. And it's, even in going back in the beginning of my career, you were a little leery of the newspaper or a news radio station or a TV camera heading your way because you just weren't really sure how it was going to turn out. And thankfully for me, and it usually turned out pretty well.
Let me ask, I have a question for you. Catherine Gates Skipper, she was the Veterans for Trump chair, but she's currently a candidate for Polk County Commission. And her question to you is, please ask the mayor what kind of advice he could give a newcomer to me in politics. She's running for office her first time. She's running for Polk County Commission. What is some advice that you would give her?
Well, for sure, don't make the mistake that I made, which is to try to think that everybody you see can vote for you. Targeting, identifying precincts that lean Republican, looking at your super voters list, and if you have a mail program, be sure to mail heavy to people you know are going to vote, not just ones that are nice in the checkout line at Publix again. Here we go again, where I get my information. Really, targeting has become extremely important, and I've always tried, and I'd really recommend this, is reach across the aisle some if it's a general election. You're going to need Democrat votes to win. I had a district during redistricting that after the 1980 census, so the 82 election would have been new single-member districts, and they just carved out a doozy for me. It was not winnable, but I won. And because of that, knowing who in that group was actually going to vote for you. So you have to reach across the aisle a little bit. In a general election, look at Orange County.
Sure. Oh, geez, yeah, absolutely.
Is there room for me in Polk, by the
way? Jay Galbraith, Central Florida is fortunate to have his leadership and his wisdom. I hear that a lot from a lot of people. The interesting thing about it is obviously the county dynamics have changed in Orange County since that first time when you were in mayor. I think in the last 20 years we've gone from being a red county to being now the Republican Party is the third largest party in the area. How do you feel about that change? And do you believe that we're doing the right things? What can we do to level that playing field just a little bit in Orange County? Or do you believe that it's not possible to do that? What are your thoughts?
Before I answer your question, hey Jay, how are you doing? Your magazine came out today, man. It was really nice. And
talk about that. I read in your bio, you've got some background with education, and you continue in that space. But real quickly, though, tell us about this UCF name change, because I didn't know about that until I read that. How were you, and what is that all about? How did you do that?
Well, there was a community effort that initially the school had been named Florida Technological University because there was a The Cape was nearby, Earth, Space and Defense was big, and so on. And then when some of those activities started to taper off, the community got together and said, it would be better if it was a name that really was more instructive.
Now you graduated from UCF, correct?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was FTU.
FTU, okay. Right.
So at that time, I was entering the House, and that initiative was underway, and I was one of the sponsors of the bill. And it was the simplest bill in history. It just struck out of the statutes Florida Technological University and inserted University of Central Florida. Done.
It was easy.
Yeah. So we had a lot of support on it.
So now you do something with Valencia, I understand. What is your role with Valencia Community College?
There's a group called the Council of Valencia, and it's sort of a sounding board to help President Schugert better identify some of the needs in the community, which he doesn't need a lot of help. He is awesome and does a great job.
He was one of the first people that I met when I moved to Orlando back in 1994. Great man.
I gave my second State of the County speech on Valencia campus.
Really?
Yeah, and it was themed Access Breeds Success, which is my definition of what Valencia is all about.
It's grown so tremendously. Isn't it like the #1 community college in the country? Or
it was voted, it got something called the Aspen Award, which is an award of excellence for the best college in the country. Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah,
so you got the name change for UCF, and you're continuing your work with Valencia, which is, I think, a testament to the fact that you still have a very big interest in education.
Well, you gotta know where you came from, and you gotta know who your friends are. So
is it hard?
You had a previous question.
What was it?
We were going down a different path, but
I can't remember what the question was.
Anyhow, but no, the idea of growing up here and at 18 getting a job building missiles at Lockheed Martin, having a community college open up the street that was a real point of entry to higher education, and a university opening at a similar time, being a charter classman at my high school, my community college, and my university meant there was a lot of new stuff happening.
Right.
So it's payback time.
Well, you certainly have seen this community change. You know, in the last 25 years, it's much different than even back when you first arrived here. Oh, what does the future hold for Mayor Crotty, knowing that you've done so many wonderful things? I mean, you've been elected to office. How many times did you tell me? You've been elected over the time? It's over 30.
Well, no, I was in elected office for 32 years. This is not going to sound right, and I'll have to explain it to the viewers, but I was in 26 elections because back then we had a runoff election. In a partisan race, you could have a primary, a runoff, and a general against a Democrat. So there's 3 elections in 2 years, and 2 years later it could happen. You got 6 elections in 2 years.
I got it. Yeah,
so,
right.
But over time, it was there's a lot of elections.
But you've only lost 1, so that's a pretty great record to have.
I'm glad I lost that one. I learned a lot.
You know, I tell people all the time.
I got that feeling, man. You don't want to feel that again.
I tell people all the time that are running for office, the fact that I lost is why I can help you maybe to win. Because you learn so many different things. You know, Greg Fournier says, Randy, listening to the show tonight with the mayor, I miss Orlando even more. Great show. You know, again, you continue to have fans. Greg actually lives in New York, doesn't live in Orlando anymore. I wanted to go back to that space what I was talking about earlier there. What do you do that's different when you're done with politics? I think it's difficult. I talk to my friend Chadwick Hardy about this all the time. Is if you could turn politics off, there are days I just wish I could turn it off and I wasn't engaged with it. When you're not thinking about politics, I mean, what other things have you done in your life outside of that?
It's a real problem because I view politics as a calling. I mean, people are called to the ministry, people are called to being professors, and I've always felt this was my calling.
Sure.
And so since leaving the mayor's office, I was state committee man for a term.
You know, I don't even know what those folks do. What exactly does a state committee man? I had somebody on the show the other day that was one, and I still don't know if I quite understand what the role of state committee man and committee woman is.
So at the county level, you have a county, and it's called an executive committee.
Okay.
Both parties have it. And the membership of that local organization is from individual precincts, and sometimes you actually have to run against somebody to get to be on the county. So so that's the local.
Okay.
Then at the state level, you have the state committee man, the state committee woman, and the county chairman elected by the local county committee are automatic members to the state party, which operates very similarly but on a higher plane at the state level. Mm-hmm. Same thing happens at the Republican National Committee. The state party chair and the national committee man and national committee woman become members of the national party. So it's sort of pyramid
Sure.
to the grassroots. And the grassroots people help organize, basically help organize campaigns.
How many national conventions have you been to?
I've been to 9.
And have you been a voting delegate at most of those?
2 of them. I was an alternate at some. Probably the most interesting one that I ever went to, I was a UCF student.
Really?
And Richard Nixon was running, and there were a lot of hippies that were coming to Miami Beach to support the Democratic candidate and to protest Nixon.
Sure.
And so because I was in the Army Reserves, I had short hair, and they wanted some clean-cut college students to go down and be young voters for the president. And I got to do that, and it was actually the funnest convention I ever went to.
Really?
Because I was in my 20s, somebody else was paying for it.
Hey, there you go.
And they were just entertaining us with big acts. And we were, at one point, there's a very famous picture of Richard Nixon looking at Sammy Davis Jr., and he's got a camera, and Sammy Davis Jr.'s got a camera, and they're taking a picture of each other on stage. And I was there when that happened. Also, if you want interesting, the protesters tried to tip over our bus, and they got tear gas. But
at that one, or
at the same one?
At the same one.
Yeah. So tear gas, if nobody ever told you this, like travels in the air. So when they spray the protesters, it gets in the bus.
Oh my God!
It was no fun. It was no fun.
I have another question. I don't want to stay going down this path, but Brett Shulman wants to know, and this is more of a Donald Trump question. What are your thoughts about this Donald Trump Jr. allegedly meeting with this Russian? Well, I guess it's not allegedly anymore. This Russian attorney, and the optics and how that looks. Do you have any thoughts at all on that?
Not too many, because it's really recent news, and a bigger question though. And this could be one leg on that stool, I suppose. But the bigger question is that we talked about it earlier.
Sure.
You have effectively used social media for the campaign, for the Trump campaign, and it's been a good tool.
Sure.
Problem is, anybody can do it. And if that anybody is a foreign country that we haven't gotten along with in the past, it's really going to look bad.
Sure, sure.
I'm not sure I know the answer to the question, because it's a medium that's out there that anybody could sit at their dining room table and participate in. And if they can sit at their dining room table and participate in it, and somebody participates from Moscow, I don't know enough detail about was it really something nefarious going on there or not. But with the visits that the president has taken lately, I suspect more information is going to probably be forthcoming.
Sure.
And by the way, I saw a speech in
at the summit
in Poland, and it was just one of his amazing speeches. It was one of his best.
Got Joel Greenberg, the tax collector over in Seminole County on. Did you see where he had allowed people to carry weapons in the offices? Which, by the way, I think it's great. But I'm curious, what were your thoughts about that decision to allow open carry?
He's on here now?
He's on
and
here.
You want me to say, what if
He's
I
a great guy.
What if I don't agree with him?
You don't have to agree. He's fine. He knows. I talked to him on back and forth on text, and because I did a poll on Orange County Political Voice about this, and it was clearly most people did not believe that you should that it was an issue, but many people had serious doubts that you should not be able.
Is it concealed carry?
It's open carry.
Open carry.
And that was the issue for a lot of people.
Right.
Versus, do you have any? Would you have ever allowed? Let's put it this way: if you back in the property appraiser's office, et cetera, would you have ever allowed something like that to take place, or would it?
No, we had.
We were in different times.
Loincloth, and we carried a stick with us to fend off the bad guys. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest with you. I think what I read is that they meet the legal definition of revenue agents, which entitles that to happen. So it's a decision that probably the citizens and the voters are going to respond to. I probably wouldn't have done it.
Sure.
but I may have. You never know.
Last year at this time, Mayor, you know, our city faced the whole Pulse tragedy and how devastating that was. What are when you look back on that and how our city responded to that? I remember waking up that following morning and, you know, you see the mayor and all these FBI folks getting ready to do a press conference. We had heard it was just a few people, and then it was 12 people, and then it was 29 people, and then it was 49 people. How did that affect your thinking? If, you know, as an elected official looking back, that had to be stressful for those folks being out in front of those cameras and all those types of things. Can you kind of give us a situation where you had that type of experience in your mayoralship? Or
well, I could, but not like that. It was different. And in short, I was out of country when it happened, and my daughter called, who lives a few blocks away, and it was pretty stunning news that you couldn't be around to see how it was being handled. Not just reacted to, but handled. It reminds me a little bit of being mayor when 3 hurricanes hit Central Florida. And those issues involved...
and that would be 2004, right?
2004. They were about preparedness, response, and recovery. And those are big issues. And if you kind of compare those issues to Pulse, what was the first response?
Right.
There were law enforcement coming in from all over for joint response.
And did you have to coordinate that? Who takes the lead when a tragedy happens, whether not just Pulse, a hurricane, natural disaster? How does that work?
Okay, let me tell you. Okay. A county doesn't have a police department. They have an elected, independent constitutional officer called the sheriff.
Okay.
At that time, it was a man named Kevin Berry. He was very helpful.
Good man.
In the hurricanes. But the person who was in charge on a day-to-day basis was the mayor.
Okay.
I actually had the power to file executive orders, and I joke about this a little bit, but we did two. One was to get the to be able to have emergency spending to deal with the response. And another was, I actually, this is the funny part, I was actually mayor of Orlando for a day because we created the equivalent of martial law, and I was the mayor of the whole county directly.
Really?
Yeah. It was one day, nobody really knew.
And was that to keep everybody in their homes? Was that the intention, or what was?
Well, the main thing was it was related to curfews and things of that nature, and putting protocols out that if you approached if you did take your vehicle out and you approached an intersection where there was no signalization, treat it like a 4-way stop. There were just lots of things. But so at the local level, I was in charge of that effort, and federal law says that the federal agencies will deal with counties, not cities.
Okay.
That's why when there's a hurricane or a disaster type event, you always hear more about the counties than the cities because that's statutory.
Gotcha.
So, you know, mostly getting word out to people, and the recovery part.
Did you know? I mean, I'm sure now you can tell us, but. You know, we were watching it on television, you know, obviously with you and everybody else. How did they prepare you for what potentially was going to happen? Who calls you and says, Mayor, I really think we're going to have a problem, and you now have to go into this space that you're really, whether you're trained for it or not, you're dealing with people.
That's a great question. We were moving that weekend.
You mean your family?
My family was moving from one house to another in our neighborhood.
Right.
And so about 4 p.m. On Friday the 13th.
Was it the 13th?
It was.
Oh, that's creepy.
So Steve Triggs was the communication director, and he was very good friends with Tom Terry. He'd worked at Channel 9 together. And he called to tell me, boss, you got to get to the Emergency Operations Center. Hurricane Charlie's heading here. And I said, well, wait, slow down. It's going to Tampa. What are you talking about?
Right.
He says, no, it wobbled. Boss, the deputy sheriff's on his way to come get you.
Oh, really?
You're in charge. And I went,
What's going through your mind at that point?
Rising to the occasion, honestly, and knowing that we were, I think, best in the business of being prepared. So Jeb Bush came to the center. He brought Craig Fugate, who's now in Washington. So obviously, we defer to the governor and the state director of FEMA. But Sheriff Berry was very involved. We had entered the recovery part. Here was a cool thing. as mayor and members of the commission, we approved like a couple weeks before the hurricane the ability to have a debris recovery firm just come in and be here, just like that. And it's they're usually out-of-state companies, and they're not employees, they're subcontractors, have pickup trucks. They come here. We hire an engineering firm to set up debris removals lots all around the county.
Right.
And so we did a graphic of this, and this is kind of fun. We picked up enough debris, and think about this. What happens in 44 years between 1960 when Hurricane Donna hit and guess what? Oak trees grow a lot.
Right.
And what happens when oak trees fall? They pop sidewalks and sewer systems. They fall on power lines and knock out power. They fall on roofs. You got leaky roofs. That was the biggest challenge we had.
When did you realize the devastation? You know, just from my own remembrances of walking outside and it almost feeling you're because there was no light.
Well, I was in a helicopter the next morning.
So you were out like looking over.
Yeah, I can tell you I got airsick too. It was very rough out there. But back to the debris, and I'll get off the subject.
Okay.
So we did a graphic. It was the Citrus Bowl, and that the Citrus Bowl was full of all the debris. It would have filled the Citrus Bowl.
Wow.
Oh wait.
Which is now Camping World Stadium.
Yes. But there's more. To the height of the Empire State Building. It was amazing how many trees can grow in 40 years and when struck by a hurricane, fall over and the root structure damages everything. That was our biggest damage.
So you're going over the county in a helicopter and you're realizing the magnitude of all that. And I just wonder how you kept your cool. I mean, what was going through your mind that made you be able to say, rising to the occasion, of course, but there had to be a lot going through your head that I can't make any mistakes here, I got to do that.
When Steve called me there, he had already staged a press conference.
Okay.
And your question has been asked to me by a lot of people in that moment of urgency that I said, citizens of Orange County, looking in the camera,
right.
This is not a drill. Hurricane Charlie has wobbled in South Florida and is making a beeline for here. We've got about 4 hours to get hunkered down. You need to be safe. Get in the house with your families. If you got hurricane supplies, it's no time to run and get them now. It's sort of too late. I'm not sure how I did that.
Well, you know, I recall
watching
watching all that and feeling safe about it after it had happened. I mean, you clearly stepped into the role and did it. I mean, with brilliance, because again, that's why I just wonder how, if you're not prepared for such a tragedy, you know, you kind of got on the job training. So.
Well, we'd had drills, and I'd been in a couple of in my youth in Hurricane Donna. In the 6th grade, but you just do what you got to do, man.
Right.
You know, if you got the medal for it, you get up and you go.
Well, what's next for Mayor Crotty? You know, you've got this wonderful career behind you. I hear you dabble in real estate and things like that. What's next?
Dabble would be the keyword. Dabble.
Well, I don't.
Guys got to have a hobby. Right?
You got to have a hobby. What is next? What are those things that if you are looking into the future, what do you see yourself doing? And certainly, you know, I'm going to ask you the question. I mean, it's out. It's been suggested.
Well, let's just take it head on.
Okay.
So the rumblings that I may seek the mayorship of Orange County are accurate rumblings. Have I made a final decision? No. Am I trending in that direction? Yes. But I'm going to do just like I did with Jeb Bush and go to the mountains and think about it. I'm taking a leisure trip here in a few weeks, a couple weeks, and that'll give me time to do a lot of thinking. And I'll probably have an answer to going forward in that period of time. And you know, I talked to one of the candidates lately, and most of them are friends of mine, by the way.
Who's That's going to be friendly.
Well, this is great.
But they know you're probably thinking about it possibly.
Yeah, I don't know if we got time for this or not, but
we do.
They all worked for me.
Really?
Seriously. P. Clark was on staff as a deputy county administrator, helping usher through and was really very effective at PCAN, which is a primary care access network, which was care for uninsured and underinsured citizens. And he did a good job.
Good.
We've had a jail oversight commission, and I asked Bill Sublette to chair that group, and we were able to put into play a lot of reforms. First appearance courtrooms at the jail instead of dragging them downtown, video visitation, a new booking and release center, and Bill did a good job. And so that's a couple. Rick Singh worked for me in the property appraiser's office back in the day as a residential field appraiser.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and Jerry Demings worked as a public safety director, which is an interesting job because it's we have a sheriff,
right,
and we have a jail chief, and we have a fire chief, but so some of the some of the ones talking about running, I have personal relationships and friendships with, by the way.
Well, how do you, one of the awkward things I think we've noticed, and we'll start heading and wrapping this up. Folks, if you have any last minute questions, please direct those towards the mayor.
Easy ones only.
Oh, this is easy. Yeah. Oh yeah, they've been pretty easy. Everybody's really happy to see you on again. It's been a while since we've seen you in these spaces, but the county and the city have always had what I've observed is somewhat of an interesting relationship, sometimes strained. When you were mayor, was it like that? Did you feel that tension that we sometimes see?
Here's a great thing. If we can rewind for a minute.
Okay.
I talked about bipartisanship and a real minority role in the legislature.
Sure.
When I left the Senate, there were 17 Republicans and 23 Democrats. And it was pretty close. That's when I was floor leader and had to do a lot of chores in that regard. Buddy replaced me in the same seat as a Democrat, but it flipped. There were 17 Democrats and 23 Republicans. And he did very well at the same thing I did well with, which was collaboration.
Right.
So you had two guys that really were sort of schooled in how to do stuff together. And it's true that a lot of the facilities that are in place today are downtown, but trust me when I tell you, county money was the reason.
When you look around at all the various folks who are involved in, folks, I'm just looking on your questions you have. Do you feel that there are any superstars in the state of Florida politics, local politics, national politics, taking our president aside and taking some of those people that might be running against you, and if you do run, who are some people that you think have been pretty good at their jobs when it came to really getting the work done that they've been elected to do?
Well, a lot of my friends, Jeb Bush, Tony Jennings, Daniel Webster, my contemporaries. When I was coming up, they were coming up, and I'm pretty proud of that group of leaders. I guess I'll leave it at that. But I just I really respect and admire. There's the current crop of potential gubernatorial candidates. I enjoy a friendship with Adam Putnam, who I think would be a guy to look at.
I actually saw you at his kickoff.
Yeah.
He seems like he's very charismatic. He seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. It seems like he's got a lot of support and well-rounded plan for attack. Well, sir, it's been great talking with you. I really appreciate not only knowing you, especially in how, every time I called you when we were doing a rally or something at the home down there in Belle Isle or something, you were always there, always positive, and always trying to embrace and build people up. And I think that's what we look for in our leaders, is we want someone that's going to be able to do that. And we appreciate that you continue to do that.
Well, it's not the norm today, but thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, this has been Straight Talk Politically here with the former mayor of Orange County. Like you heard, he's not sure if he is or isn't going to run, but he is thinking about it. You're going to the mountains to think about it. Is that what you said?
No, I'm going across the sea.
Well, hopefully you're not rowing
This
a boat.
is a big decision.
Oh, I believe. Hey, listen, I didn't even really want to talk about it.
But when I went to the mountains, it came back as a positive, so that might be a clue.
I wasn't even going to talk about it, but when you said it was okay, it's okay. Everybody, thanks again for tuning in. Just keep in mind, we're going to continue to do these shows, hopefully start doing some on a daily basis. I appreciate Bayshore Interactive. This is powered by Studio Bayshore. Our new studio, we're going to continue to learn the technology of streaming live, but I think Tommy did a great job tonight, so thank you, Tommy Bayshore. Everybody, thanks again, and we'll see you again really soon.
Good job.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
I didn't know all that stuff about the hurricane, but I was intrigued. Because I would wonder if you're really prepared. Are you